Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. This is where accounting professionals just like you learn all the ways to grow their firm, sharpen their skills, and have consistent increasing sales. I cover topics such as detaching from the emotional side of the sale, having paradigm shifts in the most important part of your business, which is the nucleus of your accounting firm, sales, and how to see an objection really as an asset and stop giving away your time for free for those that don't deserve it, so you can actually get paid your value and your worth and grow your top line revenue. You'll learn tips, sales strategies, as well as hear from personal interviews from successful accounting professionals. This podcast will show you exactly the blueprint on how to create the firm and life of your dreams full of abundance. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest. Our special guest is the co-founder and president of the American Institute of Certified Tax Planners. As the driving force and visionary behind the San Diego-based nonprofit, Dominique has set out to change the way tax professionals approach tax planning, realizing that many tax professionals, maybe even listening today, were missing government tax breaks that could save their clients millions. So she created an elite network of tax professionals, including CPAs and EAs and tax attorneys, who are trained to help their clients proactively plan and implement tax strategies so that they can rescue thousands of dollars in wasted tax. And Dominique has successfully licensed over 1,000 tax professionals as certified tax planners across the country. But before we welcome her again to the show, if you are a tax or accounting professional who owns their own firm, I know that some of you are sick of grinding 14 hours a day, sacrificing your time with family and friends, or even postponing vacations due to every deadline that comes up. And you might even be really exhausted from being on that daily financial roller coaster because of discounting fees. And then you end up resenting your work and even the clients because they only see you as a commodity. Now, none of this is your fault. And I know that nobody's really training on how to fix these problems and really connect the dots. So if you want to take a control of your firm's revenue to double it with ease, finally feel confident to start charging premium fees with clients who appreciate your value and get paid what you're worth, then here's what I've got for you. My team and I have set aside the next 48 hours to speak to some of you personally about how you can apply these ideas to your firm today. So if that's you, head on over to theabundantcall.com to book your call with us. Whatever your biggest challenges are, trust me, we've seen it and we know how to overcome it. So go ahead, book your call over at theabundantcall.com, and we look forward to talking to some of you soon. Now let's welcome Dominique to the show. Welcome, Dominique, to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me back, Michelle.
Of course, anytime. I mean, it's always great to have you here. We always have great feedback when you're here on the show. And just in case someone doesn't know who you are, and I've already done your intro, why don't you just share with everyone who you are, Dominique Molina?
Yeah, I am an accountant like you listening. And I started my career like most accountants, going to school, getting my advanced degree, becoming a CPA, working for a really large firm, opening my own practice so that I could have the freedom that owning a business is supposed to bring you. And the misery of public accounting life started to set in and took its toll. And as it does, you know, when you're sitting for long periods of time, it affects your health. It affects your relationships when you don't have time for any friends or meaningful relationships outside of work because work comes first. And so I decided to do something about it. And I decided to convert my practice from compliance focused to advisory services. And that's sort of the buzz term right now, Michelle, is this word advisory services. For me, that meant tax planning with that tax planning focus. Now, I can never fully abandon compliance because we have to do it and people need it done well and right. But I found that when I lead with the advisory services, things begin to change in the practice. I can charge a lot more for the value that I'm bringing people.
Yeah.
And I started to see a lot of really big changes. And so I still have my practice today, but a lot of my time is spent helping other tax professionals learn how to do strategic advanced tax reduction. And when we train in that method and that model, you too can convert to an advisory service focus, which really allows you to finally get that freedom in your business. That's what you set out to do when you start a business.
Yeah, no, and I'm so excited because today we're talking about how to sell advisory services to your current clients, existing clients. And I think for a lot of people, they find it hard, impossible. You know, I've been doing it, but I haven't ever charged for it. So I know that's what we're going to be talking about today, to hear all of your tips and tricks and how you ended up selling advisory services to your existing client base in order to focus on this and lead with that. And then, yes, doing the compliance just because it's part of what you have to do. So thank you for being here.
Oh, you're welcome. I think you're taking the mystery out of this, Michelle, by talking about this on your podcast, because I think it's a very popular term right now. And so people like to throw the term advisory services around and maybe even tell success stories. You know, I saved someone $100,000 and I got paid $10,000.
Yeah.
And that sounds great, but it often leaves everybody else going, well, what did you do? Like, what is this mysterious service that you did? How did you create the savings? And how did you come up with that fee? And how did you get somebody willing to pay that? And then what does that ongoing commitment look like?
Yeah.
Are there strings attached with such a large fee? Yeah. And so you're sort of pulling back that curtain to say, hey, let's actually talk about what this is. And I'd be happy to go through some examples today as well.
Yeah, and I think let's do that for sure. But for those that maybe are not doing tax planning as an advisory service, what are some other advisory services that accounting and tax firm owners could sell to their existing clients? Are there other examples that you can provide other than tax planning, since this term is loosely thrown around all the time?
Oh, sure. I think if you really break down what we do for people in the accounting space, we are in the transformation business. We help transform small businesses. And day in and day out, you know, the lines kind of get blurred about what our responsibilities are. You may have gone into business initially thinking you would take care of someone's books on QuickBooks, or you would complete tax returns and get those returns filed. But in reality, a lot of times what we find is people come to us for a lot of different things. They may have questions about financial aid for their kids, or am I adequately insured, or what are the liabilities I have in my business? You know, what do the financials mean? And what do I do with that information to help the business be healthy and happy and help me grow? And we're vital in all of that. And so if you really look at it at its simplest form, advisory are really those strategic services that we offer that help create transformation in people's lives. Might be helping the business get to the next level. It may be helping somebody reach their financial goals. It may be helping somebody through the process of starting a business or exiting a business or transitioning a business to the next generation. And so anything that's instrumental in creating that transformation is what would fall under that advisory services. And we use that term as the opposite of transactional services. Transactional services, the revenue model, you are getting paid to complete a transaction, fill out a form, enter transactional information into QuickBooks and produce a financial statement. Send something in for property taxes. Those are all transactions, and you get paid one time, and you hope that that's going to be a repeat transaction. And it tends to be repeat. We see people have these needs regularly and routinely. But at the heart of it, you never really know if somebody's going to come back.
Yep.
The opposite of that in advisory, you are seen as the most trusted relationship that people have. There's sort of these three relationships that people rely on the most. One is going to be their spiritual advisor, utmost trust. The second's going to be their physician or health advisor, utmost trust, right? You're really talking about life and death. And then finally, we get into the financial advisory services because we're dealing with people's livelihoods. And so anything that falls under that consultative role where people call us for help in making decisions, should I buy or lease my car? I'm going to make an offer on a home. The bank wants to hear from my trusted advisor. Will you write a letter and support me? Those are all what we would refer to as advisory services. And so in the tax world, we look at planning as part of that strategic process, which shifts that from a transactional model more into that consultative style engagement.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for defining it. And now we can go into the different steps that you've got on what you've seen was the best way to sell these advisory services to existing clients. And if you don't do tax planning, like Dominique said, it could be helping someone exit their business, transition it to another generation, maybe financial goal. But any time that you're creating transformation, strategic services that are not a one-time transaction.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there is, if I could just label it, I think there is a real fear. And what I see in our industry is that there's a fear around the topic of billing, as you know, Michelle, when we talk about pricing and especially raising your fees or raising your prices, there's a big fear around that. And no one likes rejection. And so there's this big concept that, well, what if they reject me? And then now I lose my so-so paying client. I'd rather keep my so-so paying client than take a chance that they might turn into a great paying client. And so fear kind of drives that conversation. The other thing where fear shows up is that accountants often fear that the client will be upset by failure to offer these services in the past. And so on the tax side, we do that because we're looking for the cost of what wasn't done before. And we use that as a way to highlight our value. What this could look like on the accounting side would be, well, you've never explained what these financials mean to me before. And so sometimes as accountants, we tend to focus on what we haven't done. And it's sort of an impossible standard, if you think of it, that we hold ourselves to. Because listen, if you didn't offer this before because you didn't know how, you're not responsible for that. You cannot possibly beat yourself up about something you didn't know. And so you can't, I know as accountants, we kind of pride ourselves on getting things right, but you're not going to get it right 100% of the time. Yeah, and so it's just not realistic. So just because
too, like taking and acknowledging that you're learning something new or that you haven't done it before because you just didn't know, and taking responsibility for that will also have your clients and current clients and, prospects, they don't really know because they haven't worked with you yet. But having that confidence that might be lacking to offer this to your existing clients versus seeing it from the place of fear. Sometimes when we take responsibility, it relieves the pressure because it probably feels like you're in a pressure cooker, right? The fear is bubbling up. You're upset that, or your clients might be upset with you. You're fearing that they might be upset with you that you didn't offer this in the past. Then you fear the rejection of them maybe leaving you because you didn't have it in the past and offer it. So there's like double and triple layers of fear where sometimes we just take responsibility and ownership. It relieves that and allows you to, really say, hey, this is how I'm doing things now, and it's in your best interest. And I apologize that I didn't do that before. I didn't know.
Right. And I think there's a real vulnerability in that as well. You know, the trust is key in what we do, and we have to have that utmost trust for people to tell us the truth about things. And sometimes people are intimidated when they believe that we're these perfect financial beings. So I've had lots of people tell me in the past, like, oh, you know, I'm sure your bank account doesn't look like this, or I'm sure you reconcile your bank account every month, you know, within the first week of the month, or I'm sure your financials are always up to date. And, you know, for me to be able to look back at my client and say, no, actually, I get quite busy, and you'd be surprised. Sometimes a month might go by and I just haven't had time to get to it. And it sort of makes them relax because now they can see me as this human being and not up on this pedestal that, you know, we're these magic people that somehow numbers make sense to, you know. Yes. And so here's just some practical advice on this is, number one, just to stop beating yourself up, because, you know, failure, it's not a failure at all. And while you may be focusing on the fact that you're offering something new and you feel overwhelmed with that change, that's not overwhelming to your client. We're overwhelmed with the prospect because we've got a lot of people to adjust this model to, plus we're doing a lot of other things. That's not the situation with them. And so focus on making your offer feel special to your existing clients, and consider how you might position your request, maybe even as a reward for their loyalty in business.
Can you give us an example of how you would make that feel special to your existing clients and what that reward would look like to them? Like a story or an actual something that you've seen work?
Yeah. Back in 2006, when I started making this transition in my own business, I was terrified to bring it to my existing clients. I liked the idea, and it was comfortable for me to offer it to people I didn't know. And it worked really well for attracting people, new clients into the business. But I too was fearful about what the response might be from my clients. And so I actually picked out my very favorite clients, and I let them know that, hey, you know, I was thinking of you. I took a look at your file, and I really think there's some great opportunities for you to reduce your tax in a major way. And since you're one of my favorites, I wanted to bring this to you first. I won't be able to get to everybody because I work with a lot of people, but I wanted to make sure I brought this to you first. And that makes them feel like, oh, you know, here I've been loyal to this advisor all these years, and now they're kind of acknowledging me for that, and I get to the top of the line. That's my reward, right?
Yeah.
And so when you do that, they are not sitting there adding up in their mind any value or cost from the past. That's just not the way people's brains work. We kind of think that way, but most people's brains work a little differently than accountants. So, you know, in that respect, it sort of allows me also to get out from behind that fear in also believing that, yes, this is something special. And I do want to bring it to my very favorite people. And I do want to bring it with people that I trust and that I've known for a while, because I trust them to tell me the truth as well. If they look at me and go, well, this is crap, I don't like this, and I wish I never met you. Well, you know I can rely on them for that. But that just hasn't been my experience at all in bringing this offer to existing clients.
Okay, cool. Well, we got stop beating yourself up for it. What would be the second thing that needs to happen in order to really sell advisory services to our existing clients with removing the fear and also, like, you know, layering on to having them feel special and making this a special offer instead of maybe the overwhelm with this change, even though the clients have no idea about it?
Right. I think a really good piece of advice is to make sure that you're pricing adequately. I mean, raising prices, you know this, Michelle, it's not easy to implement. particularly if you're going back to the same people year after year. But if you position this as something completely different than what you've been offering in the past, and go to the extreme measures with this, for example, maybe you've got people that come to see you in the office. Maybe this is one of those services where you go out and you see them. You make an appointment, you show up at their office. So you're taking a very visible, distinct step that separates that this is different from what you've been doing before. The disadvantage that we have is that people don't really understand the nuance in our work.
Right.
And as a result of that, they tend to lump it all together and they go, oh, all that accounting junk or that tax stuff. And to them, it all falls under the same umbrella. And so if you want to be able to charge more, you have to be really clear in your communication that A, it's for something very different that you're doing, and B, it also creates very, very different results. So making sure that you focus on that value piece. And if you're not able to specifically quantify the value, in tax savings, it's easy to say to the penny how much we're worth to someone. In accounting, for example, look for those outputs. What are the results? Did you help somebody's revenue grow? Did you help cut expenses because you recommended cheaper services or package deals, for example? Did you help somebody make a new hire in their business and now they're able to get more done? So you can describe that in terms of free time. Focusing on that result helps bring the attention to what really matters to them. Otherwise, we end up just stuck in this discussion of inputs. How long did it take you to do that? Or which forms did you have to fill out? And all of that's really meaningless.
Well, and I think that's the transactional piece, where what you're saying is the transformational piece. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from today, and just listening and being able to make this change to your current existing client base. Is how is this transformational to this person? How is it transformational in their financial goal, in their exit of the business, if they're transitioning the business to another generation? Thinking about it from that point of view versus, the other way, and what form you filled out and all that, because that's not the end result. That was the how you did it.
Right. I think most people are familiar with this story. In fact, I think there's a meme going around on the internet somewhere, but the idea is that you have this engineer that comes in and fixes an important piece of equipment with a quick whack of a sledgehammer. And then he turns around and he submits this itemized bill for the work. And it's $5 for the hammer, and it's $4,995 for knowing where to hit the machine with the hammer.
Yep.
Right? It's not the time that it took to hit the machine. That's not what fixes it. But it's that result of the working machine that everybody wants. And so the same is true in what we do. We just really haven't been trained to number one, remind ourselves of that value, and number two, communicate that well to people that we work with.
Yeah. And like you said, pricing it accordingly, because if you don't price it massively differently, it will seem like it's everything else you've already been doing. Right. And, I know you teach value pricing, and I always do, and it has to be a drastic change. It can't be $20 more or whatever. It's like your hammer explanation. Right. It needs to be $4,995 more than maybe what you were doing before. Now you have something that not only has questions possibly from your clients, but the result will match the investment. Yes. I think a lot of times the result is so great, yet the investment is so little that I would be scratching my head like, how does that add up? How am I? Dominique just saved me $20,000. I have to pay the IRS, and she only charged me $500. None of this makes sense.
Absolutely. There's a price that is so low where people begin to question your value.
100%.
So now you start to get the distrust of, well, maybe it's not what she thinks it is. Do I need to worry about this? Are we not, or am I missing something, to your point?
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful with the image that you're portraying if your pricing is too low. Yeah. And I think the added difficulty there is that unless you can really afford to take the time that's really necessary for these advisory services, because let's just be clear about this, advisory services do take more in terms of your relationship with the client. It takes having a stronger relationship so that you know more about the business, so that you can be strategic and offer that strategic advice. And
and maybe meeting them in person, doing the thing you normally wouldn't do on the transactional side of the business is going to also impact how you sell these advisory services to your existing base of clients.
Right, exactly. And if you don't carve out that time and then you offer this, people might be disappointed with the result if you're not available. So that's the other thing is if you're promising that, hey, I'm offering this new advisory service that requires proactive work and I'm going to be there and work proactively with you. And the next time they hear from you is when the tax return is due. Well, that's not congruent with what you said. So you have to actually adjust your fees so that you can afford to offer this level of service to your clients.
And so the clients also see that the investment is in alignment with the results. So thank you, Dominique, for sharing. Is there anything else that you wanted to share today? This has been great. This is a transformational experience. This is not a transactional. We have to price accordingly. We have to stop beating ourselves up and understand that it may be overwhelming to us to make the change as the firm owner, but your clients have no idea what's going on. Is there anything else that you'd like to share as it results to the best ways on how to make this transition to selling advisory services at a high price in making that investment with the client to their existing clients?
Yeah, I think it's about focus and paying attention. And if you think about it, it's so easy. We get swept up in the whirlwind of our deadlines and piles of work. And it's really easy to be focused on that, just meeting those deadlines, getting that paperwork out the door. But again, with advisory services, it's much different. It's not a transaction. Everything is about the result that you're creating, the difference that you're making. It's about making a greater impact and a greater difference. And so if you can focus all on what kind of difference you're making, it'll be a lot easier to take a step back from the grind and be able to see the bigger picture of what you're doing that impacts people as well as the impact you're making on your own business.
Yeah, no, I love that. And focusing on the difference you're making, I would say with all the firm owners I've helped and worked with and talked to, it's one of the things that our focus is normally on the grind and the deadline. I always hear about the deadline. My head's in the weeds. We got a deadline coming up in 2 weeks. I got a deadline in a month. It's always about that. But what if we say, what if it's my advisory services I focus on and about the difference I'm making with the work that I'm doing? And I love that.
Right. And it doesn't ignore the deadlines because obviously the compliance work is necessary and it's got to be done well and it's got to be done right.
Yes.
But it's shifting that focus into what you're doing that really makes a difference for people. And it's not a form that gets filed, right?
Yeah. No, I love that. Well, Dominique, thank you so much for being here with us again today. It's always an honor to have you. And, keep doing what you're doing. I know a lot of people have come over to you and have heard about Certified Tax Coach and the Institute through this podcast. But before we end it, do you want to just share how they can find out more about maybe learning the tax planning on the technical side and how you can really help have an advisory service to offer if maybe they don't have one right now?
Yeah, that's sort of the behind the curtain stuff, right? It's the how. How do you actually create that value? What are those outlines the processes, the tax codes that you go to make this kind of happen. And so we focus at the Institute of Certified Tax Planners on that technical knowledge. You can find us at certifiedtaxplanners.com. We've got a lot of great resources there. We also publish a twice monthly newsletter with 4 different tax reduction strategies each issue. And you can find that at thinkoutsidethetaxbox.com.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for being here with us today on The Abundant Accountant. It's always an honor to have you.
Thanks, Michelle. It was my pleasure.
Thank you all so much for joining Dominique and I today here on the Abundant Accountant podcast, talking about shifting your focus, pricing adequately, and really to stop beating yourself up so you can start selling these advisory services at premium fees so your clients really, truly get your worth. But remember that this is a transformational opportunity in your firm. It is not a transaction. And to be honest, I think a lot of us here probably feel like most of what you do is a transaction. It is a daily grind. And if you're sick of grinding out 14 hours a day and sacrificing that precious time that maybe you've missed out on for years, and you're exhausted of discounting your fees, doing free work, answering all those quick questions, and only being seen as a commodity, then know that it's not your fault and it can change. And I also understand that nobody is training you on how to fix those problems and really connect the dots so you can sell advisory services and have a transformational offer to your clients where they see the result and not how you do it. So if you want to take complete control over your firm, your revenue, double it, triple your fees, here's what I've got for you. So my team and I have set aside time over the next 2 days to speak to some of you personally. You must be a firm owner, bookkeeper, tax planner, accountant, bookkeeping firm, and you must own your own firm. If you're in a job and you have a firm on the side and your goal is to quit your job, then this is for you too. But we will speak to you personally on how to apply these ideas of even what we talked today about in our podcast. So head on over to theabundantcall.com to book your call with myself or my partner, Denise, and we'll go through whatever your biggest challenges are. Because trust me, we've seen it and we know how to overcome it. On our call, we're going to get crystal clear on where your firm's at right now and what is keeping you stuck. How do you identify the firm that you really, really want and avoid all the pitfalls along the way? And also, we're going to go through how do you plan out the exact next steps you can take to double your firm revenue. So we'll spend about 45 minutes to an hour. The call is complimentary. So head on over to theabundantcall.com, and Denise and I look forward to speaking with some of you. Have a beautiful day.